I'm going to wait for about a minute until we have... Oh, wow, we have a lot of people in here tonight. Today was a historic day. And big shout out to everybody in the comments. I'm going to turn it off for a second just so I can talk about everything that's actually happened today. So today it was announced that a ceasefire agreement has been reached between Hamas and the State of Israel. People have been asking me all day, what does this actually mean? Well, the ceasefire is a three-part deal. In the first part, there will be 33 Israelis that are going to be exchanged for, they say 1,000, it's like 989 prisoners. For people that don't understand what that means, some people always say, oh man, look, they just let so many go for so few people. A lot of the people that they arrested have had no due process. They literally were just bagged and tagged and put in a prison. There are people that have been through a trial. And according to Israel, they're saying that those people who have committed murder will not be released. But 190 of the 1,000 or so people that are being released have been there for 15 years or something like that. The end part of the first stage is that if this exchange goes through, Israel will pull out of all quote-unquote populated areas of Gaza, which means that they are going to pull artillery and tanks out. What that actually also means is that there will be humanitarian aid that's allowed to come inside. People will be allowed to bring food and medicine to the people that are starving and dying in Gaza, especially the children there. Before that ceasefire was facilitated, there couldn't be any people going in there. They were completely barred from going in, and any aid was minimal. I mean, we ourselves through a benefit show, and we squeezed money to these people, and it was a process to do so. But the truth is that whether or not people are looking at the long game of this, and we'll get into that in a second, the immediate jubilee that I see on the internet from people that are saying, oh, this is a ceasefire, everything's over. No, according to this ceasefire, if you actually read it, that's the very beginning of this. And before I get into anything else, I'll talk about the fact that the humanitarian aid that's going to be allowed to come in will mostly come from the United States, some European countries, and Middle Eastern countries. This opens it up to the second part of the ceasefire. If that is completed, the United States will facilitate, as the broker, a permanent armistice ceasefire between Gaza and the State of Israel, the ruling party in Gaza being Hamas. By this agreement, the Israeli government will not complete its goal of dislodging Hamas, but will in some other way, shape, or form legitimize them as an organization, which is a lot of what I've seen in the pro-Israel crowds. So what they're saying in the pro-Israel crowd is that this will legitimize Hamas, whereas critics of the deal will say, whereas Hamas has signed an agreement, not directly but indirectly acknowledging the State of Israel. The part that I think people need to understand is that this is all being done under the auspices of this being a United States treaty. And now we get into the third stage. The third stage of this is going to be what they call a reconstruction of Gaza. So what does this mean? This means that people will finally realize that all the United States objectives are close to being complete in the region. And what I mean by that is the United States objectives were to complete what was known as the Bush Doctrine, which is making sure that all of the countries that are not allied with the United States are in some way, shape, or form destabilized or destroyed. The only ones that were left in the region were Syria, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and the Houthi in Yemen. Of those four organizations that the United States has targeted previously to October 7th, three of these are gone now, and so to speak. Syria as a country is going to be restructured and reshaped. We'll get into that on another day, but Gaza is completely destroyed. The civilian infrastructure doesn't exist for 90% of the land masses. So there's no running water, right? There's not a roof over people's heads. There's no heat, right? There's no building. There's no toilet. There's no food. So the United States believes that these entities are now completely defeated. The problem is that Syria is a political quagmire now, with lots of different people actually vying for control now that Bashar al-Assad has been pushed out. The idea that the American-led individual is the one that's going to lead is actually an interestingly debated topic. Hezbollah is a different story because Hezbollah is not an organization that just exists in Lebanon. Hezbollah is an organization that exists in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iraq, and in other countries. So they haven't been defeated either. And I think that what is interesting about this is that what this means, though, is that Gaza is being brought into the fold of the United States, which is what they wanted it. That's what the United States wanted. They wanted Gaza in the fold. And by doing so, they want to strike a deal so that they have control over every country in the Middle East in some way, shape, or form. The only one that's left now is Yemen and the Houthis. But that's because, as I said on other lives, they were resupplied multiple times by the Russians. If you all remember, a few months ago, everybody was talking about this Russian nuclear sub that was in Cuba. And it was a rouse. Do you understand what that means? A rouse. It's like when I show you something in one hand and I'm slapping you with the other. The rouse with that was that everyone was talking about these headlines of a nuclear sub. But the truth is that a Russian carrier group, if you look it up for yourselves, please don't believe me. Look it up for yourself. Landed on the coast of Yemen, resupplying them with drones, God knows what else. Surface-to-air missiles, which is why the flyovers and the bombings were minimal compared to what was able to be achieved in Gaza. So now the only people that are left standing that are opposed to the United States rule will be Yemen. However, if you want my personal opinion, I think the United States is going to seek a diplomatic route with Yemen. The whole reason they got into the conflict in the first place was to stop the genocide. And now that that's effectively happened, so to speak, if these two steps before we even get to the third goes on, then that is what their focus is. Their focus is on bringing everyone else into the fold. The diplomatic approach means that they have the carrot and the stick, right? The carrot and the stick for young people that are watching this program, and older folks, you don't need to give it away. But it's a political term. It means they'll hurt them, beat them with the stick. But if they can't make them comply, then they just tie a carrot to a stick, like is in an old cartoon, and they lead the donkey with it, right? Listen, I've had a long conversation with people that are Palestinian today. Long conversations. A lot of tears, a lot of happiness, a lot of sadness. You know, as I posted in the advertisement for the live, they say that there's actually 30 to 40% more people that have actually been killed, and that we're not going to know the actual number until we start excavating the rubble. And then we may find that the death toll is actually 100,000 people. It's going to get to hundreds of thousands of people. For individuals that were confused and to say, oh, there's something that has to be done about Israel. The United States will always hold on to Israel. It is like a part of it. Yeah, like I think I have to explain to some people that look over at conspiracy theories. And they talk about how many Zionists are in government here. That's true, there are some. And even a disproportionate amount. But that is insignificant in comparison to what the United States is wielding over there. Israel is the United States' first strike capability in all of the Middle East. It's like the 53rd state. And also remember that the United States is also helping Israel maintain its nuclear arsenal. People asked me about that before. What do you mean, Technique? Listen, I don't pretend to be the most educated person on every single thing on this planet. But when I look something up or I research it, I definitely like to let the people that watch this show know where I got this stuff from. So if you'll take notice of something called Fukushima, which was an old aging reactor that was broken down in Japan and threatened to almost blow up if there weren't cooling systems that were brought in, or seawater, and then they dumped the heavy water into the sea, this whole debacle. Why? Because it wasn't upkept. So if Israel has 60 to 70 nuclear weapons in some way, shape, or form, the United States was helping them not just keep it a secret, but keeping them upkept. If they had to be fitted onto an ICBM, which the United States has lots of, then that's exactly what happened. And I think that what we've seen as a result of this is that the United States is really flexing its power and empire. Biden wasn't working tirelessly for a ceasefire, right? Kamala Harris was not working tirelessly for a ceasefire. They told Netanyahu to do whatever you need to do to pursue the goals that the United States wants, and regardless of how the Israeli people feel about it. That's the truth. That's why Netanyahu will be brought up for treason, but because now he's cool with the new president and they have to keep up appearances, who knows what that's going to actually do. Listen, when people talk about how America, look, I see, I'm going to look at the comments now. I'm looking at them, and some people are arguing back and forth about how much control people have and this and that. Listen, we can debate what we think we know, but we have to talk about what we actually know. In regards to Mr. Trump and Mr. Biden's role in this, you misunderstand me, people. Like, I don't fear man. I only fear God. So what's going to stop me from telling you exactly what I know here, right? Maybe my perspective is a little bit unique among individuals that are watching this. Maybe some of you think exactly the way I do. But I have always believed that these two political parties are a way that the real governors of this country that are in the Pentagon and the industry really control things and pit people against each other. So that as long as you hate someone for being a liberal, or as long as you hate someone for being a conservative, you're not paying attention to them picking your pocket. You're not paying attention to them stealing your health care. You're not paying attention to them giving all the resources, right? And you're still blaming immigrants and homeless people. Instead of saying, hey, what would happen if we took this $800 billion that we've just given these two countries to commit murder and helped people with some fire hydrants and some water reservoirs in California, or an infrastructure for a bridge that collapsed somewhere? You have to understand, man, I'm a person who believes in revolution. That means that the state in itself can't just pause a ceasefire, right? Can't pause a genocide. The system that committed the genocide, the people that backed it, the media figures that gave it cover and explained it to people and tried to justify it, the journalists that wrote articles about 40 beheaded babies, the people that were talking about how it was acceptable that there were that many children dead, the fake liberals, the fake Christians on the conservative side, all the people that didn't bat an eye at seeing little children blown apart, that's going to be studied for 1,000 years. Because we had a modern genocide in the modern era. I'm not saying that there weren't things like that in the modern era that we haven't seen, but this was a televised one. You know, we got a movie about Hotel Rwanda, and we have spotty footage of atrocities, but nowhere near something like this. Listen, 1.2 million people died in Iraq. And I'll say something else that's been a little controversial. I said this on Twitter, and then it got deleted, but it's true. You know, the Israelis used white phosphorus on the Palestinian people. They used bunker busters. But you know what the United States did not send them to use? Do you know what the United States is prevented from sending them to use? Do you know what's illegal for the United States to send Israel to use? Depleted uranium munitions that the United States used in Iraq heavily and in Afghanistan as well. But depleted uranium shells are considered now a chemical weapon. They caused thousands of birth defects in Iraq. They poisoned water. It killed thousands more people besides the people that were born with horrific birth defects. So what we saw on TikTok, on here, on Twitter, happen in Gaza has already happened in Iraq and Afghanistan. How was this accomplished, someone asked. I think that the United States expanded the board. They realized that if the Russians were occupied in Ukraine, which was a very, very, very damaging war to them, that they wouldn't be able to supply Assad. And in the end, Assad had the opportunity for some sort of power sharing, graceful exit where he called for elections, but Lavrov claims that he didn't want to do that. So I don't know if that's true or not. That's what the Russians are saying. I'm going to post this. But again, I'm just talking about what people know. What does this actually mean, right? This means that the United States has completed its objectives of controlling the entire region. And it wants to force Gaza to acknowledge the existence of the state of Israel de facto by this agreement. In return, it's going to spare the rest of the civilians from Gaza from most certain death. And since the United States and its allies will rebuild Gaza, they're going to rebuild it with the presence of the United States there. That's what they want to do. I always talk about how the United States had a plan after 9/11 to overthrow all the countries that didn't agree with its hegemonic view of the region. I keep using that phrase, but that's because that's what the State Department had put out. Well, listen, I just want to tell the people of Palestine that I love them, that they should hold tight, and that I know that a lot of them are very skeptical because they've seen Israel violate multiple treaties, violate multiple ceasefires. As a matter of fact, after the ceasefire was announced, another compound was bombed. So I think that a lot of people are very skeptical about what that means. And to the Palestinian people that are watching, I understand why you're skeptical. To the people that love the Palestinian people and were horrified by the things they saw in Gaza, you have every right to be skeptical. The United States is the greatest breaker of all treaties. You can ask Native American people that. You can ask any Native American person, person, tribe, any Native person that's in the comment. Right? Ask them about how the United States honors its treaties. Someone said, is it a coincidence that there's a ceasefire and TikTok is being muted on Sunday? Oh. Someone brought that up earlier. It's not a coincidence that TikTok was one of the places where people were able to disseminate the most information about some of the things that were happening. And some of the most horrific things. That's how the story broke about detainees being mass raped. And I thought it was sad and disgusting because I got to see the level of hypocrisy that I've never seen. All of a sudden, people weren't interested in hearing about sexual assault. At first, they were very interested in hearing about it. When they thought babies were beheaded and raped and all this other stuff, and when the evidence of that was proven to be false. I'm not saying sexual assault or other crimes didn't occur. But to the level of, people call it conspiracy. Isn't it a conspiracy to claim that all those things happened? And then when everyone finds out that it's not true and they find out that Israel is actually the one that's committing horrific crimes against the Palestinian people, that settlers have raped countless Palestinian girls and boys, apparently, that the IDF doesn't do anything about it, that the United States is not necessarily powerless to stop, but just chooses not to. Right? The idea that a person could claim to love America first, right? And this is what you think God wants? You think Jesus smiles at this? You think he's happy with that? 30,000 plus dead children? How could you believe in God and think that that's logical, right? On the liberal side, right? Because I think a lot of times people just focus on criticizing liberals. I've given Republicans their ass whipping tonight. Plus, you have to remember that conservative people now hide behind Trump's skirt and pretend to adopt his position about the Iraq war. But those conservative Christians, they rubbed their pussy to dead children for 15 years. And I'm sorry if what I just said right there is going to get this live banned or in some way, shape, or form reported. But that's the God's honest truth. I saw people make up any excuse on the conservative side for supporting the war just because Bush was your president. And then the same thing happened with liberals simply because Trump was the opposition and Biden seemed like he was talking a little bit nicer about the Palestinians, which was a complete rouse. It turned out that both of these parties were working towards the same exact goal. And you all got played. Because Mr. Trump didn't organize the ceasefire. The Pentagon that controls the military budget, that pimps this country for $2 trillion every year that they can never find. They failed an audit 7 times in a row, right? These people that they think money's a joke. You, the people watching this show, money is how you live. I'm all about my paper. Oh, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world. Yeah, to the Pentagon people, it's just funny money. It doesn't matter unless you start using it to try to overthrow the government or do something relevant with it. The first half of this conversation, I wanted to be about Gaza. But there's so much stuff to talk about. I could have a 5-hour conversation with you all about Gaza. And I'll tell you what, when the live goes off, when this goes off, I'll save the live and I'll be back on here in about 5-10 minutes. And I'll just answer questions from people. I'm dead serious. Listen. Definitely there will be a series of benefit shows for Gaza now that the aid can actually get in. And speaking of benefit shows, I was recently approached by a couple of people from the West Coast. And hopefully we'll be able to do a benefit show for the people in the LA area that had their homes decimated. For those of you that don't know, it wasn't just the Pacific Palisades and part of Santa Monica, you know? Everyone's saying, oh, it's just rich people lost their third home. Fuck them. Come on, man. Don't think like that. Some people lived in that Topanga Canyon in a fucking shack, right? There were other people that were living in the Palisades in a hole in the wall. That no apartment survived. Nothing survived. And then there's Pasadena and Altadena, you know? That's not Calabasas. That's not Beverly Hills. That's a working class neighborhood. A lot of people in Altadena, you know, they're not billionaires. That's not Millionaires Row. So let's try to be a little, you know, more truthful. Not more sensitive, more truthful. This doesn't require sensitivity. It requires action. Someone said that a person's trailer in Altadena burned down. Exactly. Thank you. This affected people that were living in a fucking trailer and people that lived in a mansion, right? Not just rich people, poor people, nothing. And there were people that said they saw ice after that. Can you believe that? Imagine that. Imagine running out of a fire and people are asking you for your papers and for your status. Is that acceptable to people? Are you out of your fucking mind? Now, let's have a conversation about the government in California. You know, don't blame Native American tribes for wanting you not to pollute their shit with their... No, we're not doing that. We're not going to blame black firefighters. We're not going to blame... The water situation in LA is insane. Just for people who want to do a minimal amount of research, there are 2 main companies that have been pimping the water supply there. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to criticizing the Democratic establishment and Gavin Newsom and Karen Bass and all the rest of them, we can have a conversation about what their affiliation is with these water companies, right? What is their affiliation? What is California's policy? I talked about it a little bit. I said that the water board has banned Nestle. They gave them a cease and desist, and someone in the comments section had been like, "Oh wow, they sent them a bad letter." And I said, "You want to be really upset? It took hundreds of activists, right? People on YouTube, on media, probably some people watching this show here that were just reposting stuff. It took all of them just to get the government of California, which is apparently being paid off by these water companies. The state of California is being paid off by these water companies because it took all that just for them to sign a fucking notice to say, hey, you can't keep siphoning millions of gallons of free water because we're subsidizing a business. I mean, imagine that. Imagine if I had a company that sold cars and I told the government, well, I want you to build cars for me for free and I'll get to sell them. What? So you're a water company and you get all of your water for free from the state of California. You don't pay a dime. Not even a cent a gallon. Nothing. Nothing. You pay nothing. So, just to go back to the point, some homies, and this is I'm going to save this. So big shout out to the homies that hit me up from the underground in Los Angeles. Whoever else wants to hit me up about potentially doing a show, a benefit show specifically in Altadena, or Pasadena, in that area specifically for those people. Because I know, sure, I've seen a lot of organizations coming out and helping the people in the Palisades because their shit is all burned to the ground. But we could do something for that entire area, right? We could get a Rebel Army Runs thing going there, or we could do a big show that would then directly donate to these organizations that are actually grassroots, that are of the people, that are working on the ground, that provide everyday food, blankets, shelters. But yeah, just wanted to say thank you to the people that reached out and say that if anyone else from the LA Underground or just LA rap in general wants to do it. Someone asked here, when are you going to rap? I'll rap at this show, motherfucker. I'll even do a new song you never heard before. How about that? Not even an acapella that I've spit, some shit you just never fucking heard because I feel like it. All right? Studio's 98% done now. Floors are done. Roof is half done. So, hey, I think this is what we can do, you know. We can provide some kind of assistance to those people. And also, hey, man, those people have been some of my most loyal fans. I've been always going to that area to do shows. And it sucks that people lost everything. The other thing that I want to talk about in relation to this fire, I'm hearing from a lot of people in Cali that they're having issues with their insurance companies now. So this part of the show is directly for the people in California. Do me a favor, look up your home insurance. Because apparently people are saying that they're getting hit with policy changes via random emails, text messages, stuff like that. I don't know if that's true. I don't want to spit false information here. I don't like disseminating fake news. But I just want to say that here's something that's not based on anyone's opinion. We as a country just had a conversation about this. We just had a conversation about insurance companies fucking people and what the end result of that is. Now, I'm not threatening anybody's life here because I know how the system works. But if you work in insurance and look, hello, I'm Paige said, yeah, I had Liberty. They sent me a policy change. Listen to me. Do you understand that if you fuck with people when they've lost everything, you're going to fuck with people when they've lost everything? Their children, some people's family have been burnt to a crisp, right? Some other people barely escaped. And I will say something. I saw a man that really inspired me, right? It was a white man and his Mexican wife. And they were sitting out there in a fucking burnt shit. I don't know what the fuck. And they said, hey, man, you lost everything. You know how these fucking reporters be? When a mic in your face after there's tragedy, you lost everything. But he was a well-to-do man. He said, no. I got my wife. I got my kids. We got everything. We just lost the house. Wow. That was very inspirational. He's got everything. Right? For those of you that still have your mom and your dad in your life, or you're watching your kids play while you're watching the live, while you're cooking something, or you're just laughing, sitting there. Imagine that. The motherfucker's screaming about a house. And he's like, no, I'm just glad that my family's alive, because look what happened to everybody else. God is great. Allahu Akbar. Baruch Hashem. God is great. And there are lots of, man, I've seen people come up with everything. I've seen that one before. This guy that just said this, Miguel de la Mora, that they were looking for a way to build a tram line through the area. And now they have the opportunity to do that. Look, there's so many theories about this. We're going to hear them all. But before that, why don't we do something nice for the people? So I'm going to work with whoever else in LA to try and get something done in March or April so that we can do a benefit show. As for the arson, I don't pull punches. There were people setting fires out there. Let's have a conversation about who they were and who they worked for. Who do those people work for? Are they going to go to trial? Are we going to find out who paid them? Right? There's a bunch of different people that were arrested for setting fires. There were people arrested for looting, but that was overplayed, according to police reports that came out later. They said, no, they had a limited number of looting. But what they did have is people setting fires. Who did they work for? What were they doing? Who's going to own all that fucking land now? Who's going to own that land? Anyway, before people start going into crazy ideas, what we do know is this, is that Los Angeles has typically had wildfires and that they don't have an infrastructure system to be able to prevent that like other communities in first world countries. So in Altadena, Pasadena, and the Pacific Palisades, I told you before, America's a reactionary society. People's houses had been fucked up, but whole neighborhoods had not been burnt down, and therefore there was no system in place. Someone estimates that the system would have cost $70 million. I saw that on Twitter. $70 million. Can you imagine? That's like 2 tanks that we sent to Israel. That's 1 plane that we sent to the Ukraine. There's no water in the hydrants, right? Why, though? That's right, because whatever was supposed to be funneled from the San Bernardino Hills to refill LA's reservoir so that there would be water in the hydrants isn't there, because it's still being funneled out, even though people have a cease and desist order against the water companies that are doing that. Someone pointed at Japan. Japan, hold on. No, fuck this. No, let's get into it. Japan, China, Africa. Listen, there are places that call third world countries, African nations, got whole neighborhoods. Middle Eastern countries have whole neighborhoods where they just have sprinklers there in case some shit happens. That's insane. The second biggest city, the biggest city in America, damn near, right? And there's nothing in terms of any backup system. Someone mentioned Korea. I saw that shit on the news too. In South Korea, right? They have a system. A water sprinkler system. Shit comes out the fucking ground. Meanwhile, people are complaining about a kid in a dress. You're talking about a culture war in America. You're fighting imaginary communism. But again, as much as we talk about racism and all the rest of these things, well, you found classism on display here. There are only two classes. There are the people that control the means of production, and there are all the rest of you and me and us. Isn't that funny that Adam Smith and Karl Marx, who were diametrically opposed to each other, right, agreed on that? There's only two classes of people. And you saw the richest people in the world had what on their house? What did they probably pay $50,000 to install? A private sprinkler system. The houses that I saw that survived, whether they're in the Palisades or whether they were in Pasadena or Altadena, many of them were saved because people took out hoses, 3-4 hoses they had, and sprayed their whole fucking house down, sprayed the whole area. It works. If it didn't work, and here's the thing, people, if it didn't work, why would rich people spend so much money doing it so that they would insure their house? Didn't get fucked up. Anyway, I just wanted to put that forth and say that, yes, I will be hit. Someone said sprinklers were part of the problem why we lost water pressure. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the fact that there should be a system in which you have sprinklers that have water pressure and water in them. You see what I mean? Other countries have that. They pay money for it. LA just didn't want to spend the money. Because like I said before, my brother, and I've chosen to respond to people respectfully who disagree or have some confusion about what I'm saying, instead of curse you out, because I found that that's not effective. It makes for good television sometimes when people are rude. But I don't think you were being rude. I think the point I was trying to make, my brother, is that other countries have this. They have the water pressure and they have the water. And they make sure that they don't leak. Because they have a system that's actually built by competent people. And therefore, when there's a fire, their neighborhood and the one next to it and the one next to that one doesn't burn down. Now, are these a perfectly 100% effective system? Hard to know. Real Slim, what's up, brother? Real Ratchet, what's up, bro? Someone asked me about making a podcast. I've had several offers. But when I see who the parent company is of the people that own them, you know, one of the parent companies for a lot of these podcasts is BlackRock. Did you know that? Now, let me ask you something. Wouldn't it be weird for me to have a podcast that was on a channel that was owned by BlackRock? Or how about Revolt TV when it was run by Diddy? Wouldn't it have been weird if Technique was working for Diddy? So that's why I just come to you here. And we get 400 to 500 people that go back and forth. I think people have invited me to come to YouTube more times than I can possibly imagine, including the people on YouTube. So. But yeah, I'll definitely do something. New music, new podcast. Makes sense. I'm going to save this live. I want to go back to talking about Gaza for a second. I think a lot of people feel like the United States, irrespective of all the things that happened, completed its objectives to a degree that it wasn't able to before because of October 7th. Israel is a country that's about the size of New Jersey, and its response time was 6.5 hours, whereas that has to be answered. All these questions have to be answered. That's not a conspiracy, by the way. That's an actual fact. But what was facilitated because of that, in the same way that 9/11 was a tragedy, and look what the United States accomplished as an empire because of that. Because we as a country didn't question, or we did, the underground did, right? The underground cats, the people that don't just believe anything that they hear, that are still watching this show, and were watching this show 20 years ago, before social media. You knew exactly what I was saying, right? They used 9/11 as an excuse to get all the things that they wanted done. And now they've done the same thing with October 7th. Dislodging Hezbollah, crushing all of their missile batteries. Why? Because Hezbollah was a game changer in the rebellion in Syria. They guaranteed Bashar al-Assad's position by destroying the splinter cells of ISIS that the United States had hired as private mercenaries, right? Or we're going to have a long talk about Bashar al-Assad one day if you want to, because just remember, his crime was not being a dictator. I'm not saying that he wasn't a criminal, but I'm saying that his crime was not being a dictator. We have lots of dictators in the Middle East and in Latin America that the United States does business with. So let's be clear. I know a lot of Syrian people, and when this happened, I listened to them. I heard them. I heard the horror stories that they had to tell me about what is going on in their country. And I waited a little while. And so I asked them, he's not bad just because he's a dictator, right? He's bad because he did all these other things. And so they talked about the other things. And I said, okay. And then after a few days, when they had had some time to process, I said, okay, well, here is a list of other Middle Eastern dictators that are also responsible for torturing and killing lots of their own people and putting down some quote-unquote rebellions. But that's not the reason that Assad was removed. He was removed because he was not in the American camp. There are dictators and people who do horrific things to their people that are just like him, if you look it up. But they're left in power because of the ability that they facilitate to help the United States in whatever it wants to do. I think that someone asked about the Mossad and the CIA. They are working in conjunction with one another. Someone asked, where can I buy your merch? Hey, just real quick. We had a printer breakdown and we were over flooded with orders. So if you ordered a shirt, I'll get to you guys in a second. I just got hit up by them telling me that there's just been an overflow, so we just replaced the printer. Any other questions? And then I'll get to a later live. I'll just do the questions after this. Me personally, what do I think will happen in the ceasefire? I think that Israel will use the ceasefire to lure some of the top-ranking people from Hamas out and then begin some targeted assassinations to make sure that they have a very pliable group of people that they can work with. And I don't mean the people that they'll be left are weak. No, those people survived the war. They're not weak. They're tough. But they're tired. And that's what the United States will rely upon. You're tired, right? Like Jesus, when the devil was talking to him on the cross. You're tired, man, aren't you, Jesus? I can make this whole thing go away if you just tell me you're not the Son of God, right? I snap my fingers, bro. You can even have a wife and kids. That's how the United States is, right? Some real shaitan shit. Go to people, bomb them, and then drop aid on them that kills them sometimes, right? I just want to say something else about all this, because we saw a Ukrainian war that revolutionized drone warfare, right? Revolutionized drone warfare in the modern era. But also this happened in Gaza too. And it happened in Yemen. Someone said, leave Jesus out of this. How can we? This is where Jesus was born and crucified. They bombed the church, a church that had existed since the time of the apostles. And that was ignored. Right? I thought people didn't care about dead Muslim children. But then I realized you don't care about dead Christian children either. As long as the news media tells you that they're terrorists. See? Also, I want to educate you, my young Christian friend. I don't know if it was you or someone else that said something disparaging about Muslims in the conversation earlier, but I really want to bless you with something. And like I said, I'm not going to curse at you today. I'm not going to call you out your name because I don't think that that's effective. But it makes for good TV sometimes. Muslims are waiting on Jesus too. You know that? Did you know that? They're waiting on Jesus. They believe that when the day of judgment comes, that Dajjal, Shaitan, and all these wicked entities will show up. And yeah, they believe in a Mahdi, a prophet, right? But he's just a man. He's just a creature made of flesh and blood. You could pick him up and throw him across the room and he could die. He can't defeat Shaitan, a fucking fallen angel. You can't defeat a jinn. No. So you know what happens at the end of the Quran? They bring back the prophet Isa, which is Jesus. And Jesus destroys Shaitan. Jesus makes origami out of Dajjal, folds him into paper, and throws him into the sun. You couldn't write a better ending for a fucking movie. A lot of people are waiting on Jesus, man. And what broke my heart is to see Palestinian Christians, right? Because for years we were told, oh man, America just doesn't give a fuck about Muslim people. No, they just don't care about Palestinian people and anyone that doesn't fit their agenda, right? Because imagine if Gaza was populated with Jewish people that just didn't want to be part of Israel. They wanted to break off. I don't want to be part of your fucking state anymore. Do you think that's how they would have dealt with them? They had some struggle for freedom. I think I want to just circle around to something. If it was the other way around, and it was the Palestinians that had an alliance with the empire of the United States, if the Palestinians had 70 to 80 nuclear weapons, if the Palestinians kept Israelis in these open-air prison camps, if the Palestinians gave them cards and told them where they could walk and where they couldn't walk, if the Palestinians took their land and beat them and then their army came by and laughed, I would be on the side of the Israeli people. If they were living the way the Palestinian people are living now. Imagine that. I don't need likes for that one. I just need you to hold that. Imagine if it was the other way around. That's what I tell people. Oh, you're biased. No. No, but yes. No, I'm not biased because they're this. I'm biased because of the situation that they're in. Is that hard to understand? Yeah, I'm biased because one person is drowning and one person is sitting on land claiming that they're drowning. One person says, oh man, they want to destroy our country and push us into the sea. Meanwhile, you're destroying their country and you push them into the sea. Those people are raping our people. Meanwhile, you severely violated their people. Those people want to take our land. Meanwhile, you've taken all of their land. I told you before, the United States government is not controlled by the President of the United States. He is a figurehead here. So they're using Mr. Trump to end the monstrosity in Ukraine because they know it's not a war they can win, but it's a war that's already cost Russia what they need it to, its presence in the Middle East. Like when Obama came in, right? Did you really think the wars were over because Obama came in and Bush wasn't there? You see what I have to tell you? That's my point. You're being played because it's one. Oh, Trump ended it because he loves America and he wants to put America first. No, Trump didn't end this with his influence. The people who run the United States said, hey, man, we're going to switch presidents because this genocide is too obvious under this old bastard who doesn't know what the fuck day it is. Right? He doesn't even know who he is. Get this Biden guy out of here. We need another figurehead. Mr. Trump, same thing they pushed when it was a horrific, about to overthrow the country era during Bush. They said, oh, no, we need a smiling, charismatic, progressive face that's going to show people that America's taking a whole new direction. So we're going to elect Barack Obama. And let me ask you something. Did America take a new direction because Barack Obama was president? So you think America's taking a new direction because Trump is president? Let me explain something to you. When a clown moves into a palace, he doesn't become a king. The palace becomes a circus. And this palace has been a circus for a long time, before Trump and Obama were even there. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. Enjoy the puppet show, right? I have hundreds of messages from people. I'm going to get to all of you guys. I appreciate you. I know that today was a very big day for a lot of people in the movement because there's finally going to be humanitarian aid that's allowed in. And that's the number one thing that we need to take away from this. The fact that people can be upset and look at the long-term goals of what the United States has planned and what greater Israel might actually expand now, because it's already expanded into parts of Syria. Israel has annexed already parts of Syria. And we could argue about this all day long, but a lot of activists are cheering. A lot of people are happy because the bombs are supposed to stop dropping, because 1,000 Palestinian people who are arrested and kept in a dungeon are going to come home, right? And because now that there's an official status of a ceasefire that's been approved by the United States under its watchful eye and under its control of all the parties involved, there'll be finally humanitarian aid that's allowed to come in so that people don't starve to death. I'll take the little wins, right? I'll take the little wins. It's not the big win, right? But I'll take it. Alhamdulillah. I love you guys. I'll be back here in about 5 minutes and I'll just answer a bunch of questions. I know that people have a lot of questions about a lot of different stuff. Africa, Asia, They want to talk about rap. They want to talk about hip hop. They want to talk. I will answer all your fucking questions. And I appreciate the fact. I'm not going to save that live because that's just exclusive for the fans. But I'll be back on here in about 5 minutes. And there's not going to be 400 people like there was before. There'll only be like probably 200. But that's fine. We'll do something intimate, something exclusive for the fan base and the people that are going to stay up late tonight. Right? We'll have a red eye session. I appreciate you guys. I'm going to save this live. I'm going to post it. Oh, Dub Sonata. What's up, brother? I'm going to post it, and then I'll come back on here in about like 5-10 minutes. All right? And that way, I covered the details about the ceasefire in Gaza. We spent about 35 minutes on that. And then we talked about what were some of the circumstances behind the LA fires. And just to recap that some people from the West Coast reached out. And I'm going to reach out to more people that I know from the West Coast to do a benefit show for the people that are in Altadena, Pasadena. So the rest of the LA community can come and help them out in some way, shape, or form. And we can celebrate that we're going to do something for them together. So stay tuned. I appreciate the love and support. And we'll definitely show the people of Pasadena, Altadena, Santa Monica, that whole area, that we love them and we want to help them rebuild. And at least if we can't snap our fingers and get a new house, just like Palestine can't snap its fingers and be free. But we'll take the little victories, like we said, right? We'll take a ceasefire so that we can get food to those children. We never lose sight of what we really want, which is the freedom of our people. Just like in the West Coast, we're not going to lose sight of what's really going on. We don't want these developers to come buy up people's homes. This government failed them. This city failed them. Their state failed them. They deserve to help them. You subsidize billions of dollars, right, for a water company. You subsidize billions of dollars for a genocide, right? But you can't subsidize helping someone to build their home. And now you want to cancel it with your fucking insurance company. We just talked about this. Luigi just had a conversation with you motherfuckers about this. Stop doing this to people. Stop hurting them. I'm going to try to help them as much as I can with me and my people. But for the love of God, do not screw the people over, please. Because I'm telling you right now, they've had enough, man. They can't take much more. I'm telling you right now, I'm not trying to rebel rouse the 300 people in here left. But God damn it, those people can't take much more. We just talked about this. Don't do that to people, man. I love you guys. I'm going to be back here in about 5-10 minutes, like I said before. And I'll answer all of your questions. Thank you very much for coming to this live where we covered the details of the Gaza ceasefire agreement, the background of the LA fires, and a little bit of what the United States has planned, irrespective of who the president is. Thank you very much. You guys have a wonderful night. And for the people that want to talk to me further, I'll be back here in 5 minutes. Peace.